All right, welcome back, everybody, to episode 6 of the YMAO podcast. Today, I again have no no idea what I'm talking about. I guess I'll start with how I'm doing. I'm pretty upset because a few episodes ago, which pretty much just means a few days ago, I hurt my knee, and it still hurts. I'm going to volleyball tomorrow, but I'm not going to be ready. So I'm going to take the day easy, try to get some light exercise, and just get used to playing some volleyball again. Trying I've just been craving, so I'm going back even though I feel like I'm not supposed to. And if I look around at all, like around me, it's because there's this mosquito in my room, and it has just been this assassin that's just been biting me, and then like dipping. So it's just been biting and dipping me, like hiding somewhere in my room, and I don't know where it is. But anyway, we're gonna talk about my day, I think, just to start it off, and just talk about, I guess, what I like. I guess the topic of what I did, which is a solo date. I went out today and I decided to go into the city. If you don't know, I am from New York City, so and I live quite a bit away from the city, like about an hour and a half, 2 hours ish. So I traveled to Manhattan and I went to Central Park, and I decided to film some content for uh, some film or some long form content. It's going to be pretty short, but I think that you guys will like it. I think it's a really cool concept. So look forward to that. But I went on a solo date. Just main task was to get some film, but I ended up just kind of making a whole day out of it. I woke up at 8 a.m. and I ended up just kind of filming at first, and then realizing that it was really early in the day and that I was going to be hungry for lunch. So I thought, hey, I'm going to film from like 9 a.m. to 12, and then I'll get some food. So I ended up just having a lot of time. I put my headphones on, I brought some water to make sure that I wasn't going to pass out while walking in 85-degree weather. I think it was like 85 degrees. It's pretty hot, but it was really nice out, beautiful weather, and I just I just filmed a bunch of things that I thought was really cool. I got to just contemplate and think about a lot of stuff. I kept reading that book that I was reading before, and honestly, it felt super refreshing, which is surprising. So, I guess here are some reasons why you may want to go on a solo date. So, the first thing that I think I really liked was that you don't have to plan anything out with anyone, and you don't have to worry about people saying yes, no, or not liking what you're going to do. And that was just really relaxing because my family is pretty big, my friend circle is pretty big, and lots of times making plans can feel very draining and can feel very difficult to put things together. And so it was nice to just not really care about anyone and just stay at a place for however long I want and move to the next spot whenever I felt like I was ready to move to the next spot, and not really have to worry about anyone or anything. The second thing that I think I liked was, along with being able to do whatever I want, I think there's a certain level of value that comes with being at peace and just having time alone, and just kind of being in your own head for a little bit of time, especially outside. So I feel like I'm very introspective, but it's a very different vibe from when you're just inside your room and you're just kind of thinking and looking at a ceiling. You're kind of looking at the same spot, and nothing is really stimulating your brain, and nothing gets you out of a funk. So if you're kind of contemplating because you have stuff that's happening into your life that's difficult, then being in your room just kind of doesn't help, because nothing is going to distract you when you need to be distracted. And so you just keep on thinking about things, and and then at least for me, I end up burning out or just giving up because I just think, oh, like I've been thinking about the same thing for 4 hours. I'm just gonna give up on the problem. But what's really nice is when you're contemplating and you're introspecting, you're touching grass. Whenever you feel like there's a little distraction, you like I feel like I tend to just turn my focus towards that thing, and oftentimes that's naturally what works well for human brains. There will be some points where introspecting is really really important to us, and that'll be the main focus and the main priority in our brain. But at some point, our brain wants to do something else or wants to shift our focus to something else, and we start to get diminishing returns on trying to solve a problem because our brain is just tired of thinking of the same problem. Just think about if you were to do a math problem and you were stuck on it and you were working on it for 3 hours. The first hour probably had a lot of progress because you were just getting used to a problem and playing around with it, but the 2 hours after that was probably just fiddling around with things that you already know. And you don't really solve that problem until you leave and you give up, and then you come back and realize, oh, I have this new thing, or I just randomly figured it out in the shower. So I feel like well, I mean, I feel like this, but also scientifically, it has been proven that the highest peaks of creativity and figuring out solutions are when our brains are in a relaxed state. So as we start to get more and more into a problem, our level of stress is just going to progressively increase, and we have to deload that, or we have to de-stress ourselves and relax to get ourselves back to a place where we can start to think outside the box. So I think, and then that's probably the third thing that I really like about solo dates. It literally is just about getting out of your comfort zone, stepping out into the world, and stepping out into the unknown, stepping out into things and places, areas, and events that you haven't been to before. Personally, I haven't explored a lot of Central Park, and I feel like today I did. I feel like I looked at the map and I thought, hey, like I've actually never been to this area, and I would walk around and I started to be more familiar and realize like, oh, I actually have been to this place. I just never really took the time to really absorb the information and understand that I've been there before, and just kind of understand the layout and how beautiful the entire park is, to be honest. So I feel like just stepping out of your environment, like physically, just allows you to think, like allows you to help with the second point, and allows you to introspect a little bit easier, because I think the general point is that if you're looking for an answer to a question, you would already have the answer if you knew it. If there is a problem that is within your vicinity or area of mastery, then you would already find the answer. Like if I asked you what 1 + 1 is, you would just tell me 2, unless you're really young and you haven't learned arithmetic yet. Within our area of mastery, we there are things that we absolutely know, and if I was to ask you what's 96 times 32, your brain might start to glitch a little bit, unless you're a genius or you just know your your multiplication just like that. But for the most part, answers need to be pushed, and eventually sometimes you have problems that are so complex that it doesn't just take 5 seconds or 5 minutes or even a piece of paper to write it down. It just takes actually stepping out, like physically stepping out of a box and stepping out into the world which probably has your answers. I think that's the thing that I'm trying to learn, because as you know, I have been on a giant self-improvement spree to try and grow. I've been learning a lot of things, like for example, I've been talking about how I've been trying to find ways to be happy or ways to be happier, and I realized that actually I am really happy with my life, and I'm grateful and appreciative of everything that my life has. And it's actually more of a feeling of being unsatisfied with certain situations, and wanting more or a better situation. And so the way to put it is I'm happy but not satisfied. And I didn't come up with that answer until I started to talk with other people. So it wasn't until I got the perspective from other people that I started to think differently, and I started to process information differently, even though I've asked myself the question of like, why do I do the things that I do? What makes me happy? How can I find more happiness? All these things I've asked myself hundreds of times, and I never really I never made any substantial progress until I started talking to a bunch of people and realizing like, oh, this is how other people see the world. This is how different perspectives shape the world, and it helps a lot. And the way that I like to phrase it is, when you're talking to somebody of X age, right? Like, you're talking to someone that's even 15 or 13, or you're talking to someone who's 55. You're talking to someone who has that many amount of years that you have not lived. And if you think about it like that, there's always something to learn from talking to somebody of that age, right? Like, I think in the past I've talked to a bunch of my older family members, a bunch of relatives who are, in their 40s through 60s, and have made a bunch of mistakes. And the biggest thing is that I've learned is at first they'd always start with, don't go into all these vices, don't go into smoking, don't go into gambling, and they would end it there. And I would always ask them, why don't you want me to go into smoking? Why don't you want me to go into gambling? And most people will often tell their story on why. And for example, I asked one of my uncles, why should I not smoke? And he went into 20 years of how smoking has affected him, and how it's affected his lungs, how it affected his marriage, how it affected his relationship with his kids. And not just physically, right? Because there's like secondhand smoking and stuff when you're smoking near your kids, but generally like the short temper that kind of comes with nicotine, and just developing nicotine related habits. And when I heard all of that, I thought to myself, at the simplest form, like I think I was like 15 or 16, I would think to myself, okay, at the bare minimum, what I understand is I don't want to smoke. That's like the simple thing. But as I grew up and I started to understand more and more of the words and the story that my uncle presented to me, it started to make more sense on the different dynamics with different people. He used to tell me that he got into smoking when he was in high school, and then it got even worse in college. And when I got to high school and college, that helped me out a lot to realize like, oh, I can understand why people would smoke, just because there's certain groups that do it. Maybe it might feel good because you get to make friends, or you get to be associated socially, excuse me, socially more with a different group. And so these stories and these perspectives just have often shaped how I have grown. And it's just more of a sentiment to just say that if you can't figure out your problem, go out into the world. First start with maybe just stepping out into it for a little bit, because it can be a little bit difficult, especially if you're introverted, to try and make friends, or try to, like, probably one of the bigger questions I might get is, how can I get these perspectives from people if I don't have anyone around me, or if I'm not comfortable asking people, or I'm not comfortable sharing things about my private life. Like, that's where I would go first if I was like in a viewer's shoes, or if I was listening to my own words. And so I would say the first step is to just kind of go out into the world, and you would be surprised how your perspective can shift just from observing everything, just observing how people act, how people just move, or even just sitting on a bench or on a rock somewhere that isn't your room. I remember today, I I don't know why, but I ended up going really deep into the park, and I was just walking around. I didn't even know where I was going, and I ended up kind of being around um, this this I guess like enclosement area where people rest. Like, there's just like benches and stuff, and like above the benches was a slight hill that you can kind of walk up to, and there was a rock. And for some reason, I really wanted to get on the rock. I thought maybe like, oh, maybe I could get like a really cool filming angle from here, of just the foliage or the trees or like the sunlight that's kind of coming through the trees. And it was probably one of it probably wasn't one of the best decisions I made, because I was trying to climb up this rock, and it was actually hard to pull myself up with just my arm strength alone. And usually I would use my legs to kick up, but I can't use my right leg, which is like my right side is my more dominant side, and I couldn't push off my right leg because of my knee injury. And I ended up just saying like, fuck it, I'm just gonna do it. And I pushed myself off with both my legs. I ended up like kind of inflaming my knee a little bit, and I was on the rock. And I realized that I left my backpack just like below the rock, which is fine. Like, obviously I can still watch my backpack and no one's gonna take it. But I had some things in my bag, or that I really needed, like, or that I wanted, not that I needed, but I really wanted, like my water bottle, my ice cold water, and there was a tripod in there to set up my camera so that I can maybe get a cool shot of me just being at the park alone. I thought it'd be cool even like for Instagram, and I didn't have any of it. It was just like one of those moments where I I wanted to do certain things, and I wasn't able to do it because if I went back down off the rock, then I would have to climb up again, and my right leg was already kind of had like this dull pain to it. So I was like, all right, I probably shouldn't push it again. I was already, the first thought that I had was like, I was worried that I hindered my healing or my recovery period, and I hope not. I don't think I did. I think once in a while it's okay as long as I'm not putting constant pressure on it. But I was just on the rock, and I couldn't do what I wanted to do, and so I just sat down and I did bring my camera, so I did get the shots, some certain shots, but at some point I was just up there sitting, listening to music, and there was this fly that was really annoying me, and it just kept flying around and sitting on my skin, and I just hated like feeling it kind of just like being there and kind of just chilling with me. It was really weird. I didn't really see it as like a pet or anything. I just saw it as like a weird fly. And I just remembered that I didn't have any thoughts, which is interesting because I wanted to get up on this rock, and I thought that I would at least have like there was a bunch of rewards or incentives for me to go up to the rock. I thought, okay, I could get like a cool picture. I might have some type of epiphany moment where I just realize something, like some answer to one of my questions. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll see something that's interesting, and none of it happened. And the only thing that happened was that I just sat there. I just sat there and I thought about absolutely nothing. I thought about my music for a little bit, but I guess there was I guess it was almost just really, really calm to think about nothing. For someone who's always super busy and always thinking about the next thing, and not even just me, I feel like everybody's always thinking about the next thing that they need to do. It was just one of those moments where I took myself out of the environment that always makes me think about work, and I just took the time to relax. And I feel like that was part of the reason why this whole day was kind of rejuvenating because for once I just didn't have to think, and I wasn't so tired that I needed to sleep. Usually there's some type of reason to do something, and I didn't have a reason to be on that rock really at that point. I did have a reason beforehand, but when I got there, there wasn't really a reason, right? So at the end of sitting up there for about 15 minutes, I didn't really gain anything, but it almost did feel like I had a little bit of a reset. It almost felt like, I guess, like it made me feel like I didn't have to worry about the rest of the day or the rest of the week or the rest of the month. It made me think that if I could just do nothing for 15 minutes and nothing bad happened, then maybe my fears or insecurities of financial instability or worrying about if people are going to be okay, maybe those fears were over exaggerated and not as grave as I thought they would be. And they're not. Like I know that at its core, I've been to therapy where I've worked enough to have awareness and to tell myself that these fears are just fears and they're not the reality of the situation. But sometimes I think that sometimes just subconsciously it's just ingrained in who we are. Like our fears and our insecurities are just kind of built into us at some point, and we can find ways to work around it, but it'll always be a part of us, insecurities, habits. It I don't think that there's if you have I think that if I have a habit, I'm not going to talk about like other people because I don't know other people's situations, but my specific situation, if I built a habit or a personality for the past like 25, 26, 27 years, then I think it's hard for me to completely uproot, reverse, and completely wipe that part of my personality or my habit just completely out of me, right? And so it was one of the things that my therapist said. It's just that some things in life will always be a part of you, and being a part of being a having something be a part of you isn't a bad thing. It just means that you have to work around it, or you just need to be aware enough to realize like, okay, I act like this, and this is what I have in place, or these are the tools or the thoughts that I have in place that I need to tell myself so that I don't have these negative habits affect other people or even affect myself to a specific degree. So, I don't know what I was talking about. I'm blinking out a little bit, but yeah, today was really really good. I'm still trying to figure out what rejuvenates me. I've been thinking about this. I have a lot of self improvement and productivity content on YouTube, the books that I read. I'm very into personal growth and self improvement, and so one of the things I forgot, it might have been from Ali Abdal, or another productivity YouTuber, but I remember watching a YouTube channel where they talked about how there are certain tasks that are usually tedious and use your energy or burn you out. Things like studying or your job or anything that doesn't rejuvenate your energy. And then there are tasks or things that you can do to recharge your energy. And I have been trying to figure out what recharges my energy. And to be honest, I don't know if walking around in a park and walking around in a park filming or watching people play volleyball was really my way of recharging. I think what ended up helping me recharge is just kind of like sitting down and just kind of giving myself the time to introspect in a space where nothing is really changing. I think the problem with introspecting, like in my normal environment, is that I'll have my phone around me, and when my phone's around me, the internet and social media and messaging apps are all a place that will constantly shift your focus and will constantly shift your thoughts. And so for me, who has more than one problem, I will start thinking of a problem and start thinking of a solution, and then something will give me a notification on my phone, or something will just make me shift my focus, and then I'll work on a different problem, and it'll go on like that. And I won't really explore a problem or introspect enough where I feel like I'm really satisfied. And so it'll just constantly go like that, and I won't necessarily be burnt out, but I won't really feel like I'm finishing a task in my head or finishing a specific thought process. And so I think just giving giving a time phone away, and just letting my thoughts run rampant until my brain just completely, like, I clear the backlog in my head of all the things that I want to think about. I think that's what resets me, or rejuvenates me. I remember thinking to myself on that rock, I've been thinking about this for way too long. I You know what, I'm done thinking about this. I don't want to think about it anymore. That was my thought. I don't want to think about this problem anymore. I forgot what the problem was already. But I was just so tired of thinking about it, and realizing for me that it was only 15 minutes of my time, where if I would, like, I've asked the same question, whatever it was, I definitely asked the same question, and I have contemplated, talked about, written essays in my notes app for 3 hours, and still felt unsatisfied, because it felt like the wheels were constantly turning. And I feel like giving myself the time and space just gave me the answer that some questions are not meant to be answered, or that the question has an answer, but it's not really time for me to figure it out yet. So yeah, I feel like just finishing a thought is what recharges me. So yeah, I guess the reason I feel like I always say this, I feel like I always end up yapping, and then I try to bring it back around and try to bring it full circle, because I feel bad a little bit not leaving some type of advice, or uh some piece of advice that'll just, or tip that'll help you. So try this then. If you are constantly trying to think about an issue that you have, and you feel like you're not making any headway, then put yourself in a different environment, flip your phone upside down, or just pay attention to your surroundings, honestly. And eventually what will happen, whether you're in a cafe, whether you're in a park, whether you're anywhere, eventually you'll settle into the environment, and you'll realize that the environment doesn't have as many, what's the word, stimuluses stimulants. The environment doesn't have as many stimulants as it actually does in your environment, where you would be like doom scrolling on TikTok or whatever, like messaging people, going on Instagram, whatever it is. You're going to realize that the environment doesn't have as many stimulants, and you will start to become bored almost, and your brain will start to try to find different things to do. The first thing that it'll do is it'll go to pick up your phone. But if you're like me, don't bring a battery bank, or wherever you go, don't bring a charger or whatever, or a power bank. That's what they're called. I'm dumb a little bit. And that's usually enough of an incentive to be like, oh, I can't, like, I think the reason I also went to my phone, but then I realized, oh, I can't use my phone because I need the battery to get home. And so that is usually enough where you can, like, bring your phone. You don't feel bad, because the biggest problem with all of this is that you need to bring your phone, and the whole point is to isolate yourself, or to just give yourself time alone in a space that doesn't distract you. but your phone may distract you. And you can't leave your phone at home because we're in a society where we don't do that, right? But putting yourself in an environment where there's a priority to keep your phone alive that's more important than scrolling or whatever is enough for you to put it down and to just be in your environment for as long as you need to be, to figure out your problem, to be bored, to introspect as much as you want. And it allows you to just think about the things that you haven't given yourself the time to think about. And I think that's honestly what burns me out more than all of my problems combined. It's just that I always like have these thoughts and I put them on a back burner, or I put these issues on a backlog, and I don't tackle them because I just think, oh, like I gotta go. Like I have so many other things to do. I can't worry about these things. And it'll almost just feel like very heavy. It almost feel like I have too much on my shoulders, and it doesn't need to be like that, because sometimes it just needs a little bit of thinking to figure things out. Sometimes you may just realize sometimes it's just easy enough to realize that not having an answer to your question for whatever reason that may be is enough to help you be satisfied with that question, or to not have it feel like it's looming over, or to not have you spiral over trying to figure out the answer. For example, like today I thought about my student loans, and I thought about figuring out ways that I could make more money or try to pay off my loans faster. And after thinking about it, it's like, yeah, I thought about all these ways I could make money. I thought about all these ways that I could speed up the process or save money so that I can pay it off faster. But at the end of the day, my student loans are going to take a certain amount of time. And however many months it's going to take, it's just going, like, it's okay to realize that there isn't an answer, or there isn't like a definite business proposal that's going to solve all my problems right now, and that I could just take my time and just try to have fun in the process. So yeah, I guess my advice is to clear your thought backlog. Clear all the thoughts that you have been struggling with, that you have been thinking about, because maybe you're like me and not realizing that there are all these thoughts in your head that you just haven't been paying attention to, and you would be very surprised to realize how much it's actually been weighing on you. There's actually a term for this, now that I think about it, called mental hygiene, and it works the same way as physical hygiene. In the same way that you have to wash yourself and take a shower every single day, maybe not every single day, but it would be important to metaphorically brush your mental teeth, and to just give yourself a few check-ins every now and again. And in terms of a shower, maybe mentally you might be super stinky and your mental room, your brain is full of clutter and needs to be cleaned out. And it may just be that you need to clean your room out once a week, or maybe once every 2 weeks, or at least once a month, right? So yeah, I say that as I speak, and I didn't clean my room at all, so I'm not one to speak. And it does, sometimes it does slip our minds, but at some point we just have to do it. So yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. I had a really good day. I hope you guys had a good day. If you want to see more podcast episodes, then make sure to subscribe. And yeah, thank you guys for joining. I will see you guys in the next one.